today for allowing us to come together to be able to tend to the county's and the town's business. We thank you for the councilwomen and councilmen and the mayor. We pray, oh God, that you will lead us, give us wisdom and guidance. And we give your name all the praise and glory for what you shall do during this council moment. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please remain. I pledge allegiance to the flag of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Mayor, I want to make sure that everybody knows that Councilman Jack Yellow is chances on both ends of this.
Well, thank everybody for being here this evening. Please come back in time. Council, you have in your packet minutes from the February 9th council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept them as presented?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Also, you have in your packet the February 2021 financial report. Are there any additions or corrections to that? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept them as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimous. At this time, I'd like to introduce our auditor, Bill Hancock, who would like to bring us up to date on our audit for last year. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You all should have the beige audit report that our firm issued. Everybody should have a copy of it. It's got a ring binder on the side. I'm going to touch on a couple of things that are required to be communicated from every auditor to every auditee every year. Then I'm going to touch on a few financial highlights, and then I'm going to bring your attention to some changes that have happened in some of the reporting formats, and provide a little information and a little background color on some rather new developments. Okay, so first of all, and the most important thing that the town's looking for when you undergo an audit is you want the opinion from the independent auditor. And on page 2, first paragraph at the top of the page, you can see where we rendered opinion that we find the town's finances and materials are correct, meaning that you have a clean opinion, also known as an unmodified opinion, formerly known as an unqualified opinion, which is what you're looking for. All right, we feel like the amounts and balances and the illustrated transactions contained herein can be relied upon by the users of the financial statements. Your taxpayers, your ratepayers, your bondholders, and the folks that might otherwise hold debt on things that the town has purchased. I told you I was going to jump around a little bit, so I'm going to go all the way down to page 55. Page 55 is another opinion letter from our firm to the town, and it covers two things. One, it covers our opinion on the internal control system over financial reporting. And two, it covers our opinion on matters involving compliance that the town is bound by from outside sources. So let's talk about internal controls of financial reporting. There's a cost benefit to be weighed when it comes to implementing internal controls over financial reporting. In other words, if you added 3 more people to your finance staff to review transactions, you would strengthen your financial internal controls. But the cost would outweigh the potential benefit from that. You don't understand that analysis? Now, over the course of our examination, we didn't find any instances where we thought we should make a recommendation for the change in the one you currently employ. Is the one you currently employ perfect? No. But it's about as good as you can get, given the cost that you're incurring to have. Okay, we're clear on that? Part 2 of this letter, we talk about compliance with making your payroll tax deposits on time, remitting the retirement withholdings and that to the state, remitting your police fines to the state, honoring the terms of grants, honoring the covenants you might have with bonds or loans. We didn't find any instances where you're out of compliance with those either monetarily or in a matter of time. Now, our examination wasn't specifically designed as a gotcha exercise to find out if the town tripped up and stuff was cut. But over the course of our work and through confirmations from third parties, we didn't find any of those instances. All right? That's a good thing. All right, so let's talk about some financial results for the town. All right, let's go to page, is it 19? Yes, it is. Page 19 is where the town reports on what its results were when we compare your budgeted amounts for the general fund to the actual amounts that got spent for the general fund. And on page 19, the top part of the page, you can see what your revenue sources were, what you budgeted for versus what you actually got. In the middle part of the page, you can see what your expenditures were by department. You can see 2020 was a crazy year, okay? We didn't have a whole lot of visibility when things shut down last March. You didn't know what your last quarter of your fiscal year was going to be like. But through the ups and the downs, we can predict some things that should have happened. Number one, the Supreme Court told you you couldn't have municipal court for about 3 months, right? So we would expect a decline in police fine revenue from that. No surprise, it happened, we know why. Our expenditures for general government purposes, we spent about $150,000 less than we had budgeted. Why? We didn't have as much activity going on because for a large part of what was going on in our economy overall, things were shut down. So when we take the pluses and the minuses and we can explain them like we have, in the middle of the part of the page, you see where excess revenues over expenditures, we showed a $106,000 surplus. A $106,000 surplus on a $7.6 million budget. If you were trying to spend exactly what you took in, you came within a fraction of a percent of doing so. All right? It looks like management had pretty good visibility and exercised pretty good discipline when it came to managing things that went on in the general fund. And for purpose of this discussion, the general fund basically are all the town's core functions except for water and sewer service. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Page 21. Last time I was here, we talked about water and sewer service for the town and how it had become more expensive to operate than the rate structure that the town had in place at that time. Since then, the town's undergone a rate study. I'm sure you all have had some vigorous discussions on what appropriate rate increases should be. As that is, these are the results of your fiscal year in June 30th of 2020. Halfway down the page, you have an operating loss. We separate operating loss versus non-operating because when we look at operating loss, we're looking at purely the revenue it generated less than normal, average, everyday operating costs. When we compare those two things, we incurred a $1.4 million loss. Now, since then, we've had discussions and implementations of rate adjustments. Some of that has been hard. But a $1.4 million annual loss in the water sewer system, I think we can all agree is just unsustainable. It's just unsustainable. So I encourage the council and management to keep discussions going about the appropriateness of rate should be going forward in the future. That was a lot. Any questions on that? I don't want to feel like I'm overstepping anything or leaving anything unclear. I want to make sure that you folks understand where we were on June 30th, 2020. Good? Okay. Let's talk about something new, a little different. Let's go to page Let's go to page 54. This past year, the reporting standards changed on specific things like your municipal court system and how you report police fine income. I'm glad they did it, because I think this illustration is much more helpful than the ones we've seen in previous years. You can see that for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020, at the top of the page, your police department and municipal court system generated about $70,000 worth of revenue from tickets. And what's important here is you can see 40,000 of that 70,000 went to the state. So for all of your police department efforts and tickets that they wrote, the town got to keep roughly $30,000 of that. All right? And that's for use in the general fund. The second thing that this schedule illustrates, and what I want to bring your attention to, and what I want to emphasize in the strongest manner possible, is the following. When it comes to victim services, the State Office of Victims Assistance is examining all municipal court systems on a rotating basis. They are doing 10 to 20 engagements a year all over the state, looking at municipal court systems and examining this. They want to see what's going on with your victims assistance money that the town is keeping in trust. For most police tickets that are written, there is a assessment and there's a surcharge that is to be set aside, held in trust, and can only be spent on victims assistance. Okay? This past year, you started off with a balance of a little over $43,000. You generated about $4,800, and you spent about $1,300, and you have about $46,000 left over. I'm going to share with you what happened to another municipal client of mine in the Low Country. They were not using this money to support victim services as prescribed by the law. Unlike you, their balance had risen to about $138,000. Yours is $46,000 as of this day. The State Office of Victims Assistance paid them a visit. They did an examination, and they walked out with a check for $138,000 and took it back to Columbia. The statute reads that you must spend a substantial amount, and 90% is suggested, on victims assistance programs, either through a victims assistance program the town maintains, one that the county maintains, the sheriff's department, or an interagency agreement, such as organizations like crisis centers, battered women and minor shelters, things of that nature. And so I want to encourage the town of Straw, with as much emphasis as I can here, find another government office or find another agency that will accept your victims assistance money. Because if you don't, it's a matter of time before somebody from the state comes and takes it from you. And when it goes back to Columbia, chances are it won't be spent on victims of crime that are in this area. Does everybody understand what we just talked about? Am I clear on that? All right.
Mayor, can we put that on our next briefing and discuss?
That'd be fine.
All right. Two other things I wanted to cover with you folks, and if I can, please don't, feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions, but I'll stop when I'm over when this is over and take questions anyway. Every year we talk about the biggest liability on the town's books, and that is the unfunded pension plan through the Southtown Retirement System. Every year I get asked, what can we do about this bill? From you, from other clients, and I tell them this. The only thing you can do is what you're required to do, and that is withhold the prescribed amount from your employees' paychecks, match it with the prescribed amounts out of your sources, and remit it to the state retirement system on a monthly basis. You did that. You have to report this liability on your books. There's a conflict of guidance on this. The Constitution of South Carolina says the General Assembly of the state will provide for any shortfalls in the pension system. But accounting reporting standards say that you must report your fair share since you're a participant in a multi-employer trust and pension fund. And so when we dig a little deeper into the language that says the General Assembly will provide for, well, guess what they did? They said, hey, Thomas, you're off. We're going to increase the amount that you have to match on your employee contributions. We provided for it, just like that. Aren't we good? So, again, that's the amount that we must show. I don't think it is a real liability as far as what you folks need to worry about funding in the future. You just have to make your prescribed and required matching contributions going forward. All right? Last thing I wanted to bring up before I left is on page 41. This is post-employment benefits other than pensions, otherwise known as OPEB. This is health insurance for retirees, and it is a plan that's got under discretion of the town. And I think that you folks need to examine eligibility, benefits, criteria for both, and whatever the financial impacts might be to the town currently and going forward.
Bill, you said page 41 is on.
I'm sorry, 45, Mr. Crawford, I stand corrected. It's on page 45. I think that's a future liability, so I think the town probably needs to monitor that and examine the criteria and make determinations on appropriateness probably on an annual basis.
Council, any questions, comments? Right. Bill, thank you for being here.
Mayor, I'd like to thank you all for having us again. I'd like to thank Mike over here for tolerating this, and especially Tina for putting up with our folks asking so many nosy questions and asking for so much information and taking so much time out of her day. The time we were here, your folks did well by us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tina. I want to thank you for working with them and getting them the necessary information they need to put this all together. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Council, you have in your packet second reading of ordinance 2021-13. This is an ordinance in authorizing the transfer of property located on Grand Street to Habitat for Humanity. This is second reading. Now, any comments?
No, this is what we did last time, taking some property and giving it Habitat to develop into two nice-sized lots.
Good. Hearing the recommendation, I have a motion to accept the recommendation.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried unanimous. Also, the second reading ordinance 2021-14. This is an ordinance to adopt and implement certain building codes. Rob?
I mentioned this is, the state requires us to adopt new building codes as they come out. This is on the 2018 code cycle, and it's everything from commercial buildings to property maintenance. So this is just kind of a standard update that we have to do every few years.
Here's the recommendation, second reading. Recommendation.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Also, first reading of ordinance 2021-15. This is an ordinance to add section 9-15 to the Schwab zoning ordinance standards for short-term rentals. Wow.
This came to the Planning Commission late last winter. These are standards to address websites like Airbnb or VRBO. There are a couple of property owners in town who do wish to offer those as rentals online, but we didn't really have a way to do that. We have provisions for bed and breakfast, but this is not quite bed and breakfast level. So the Planning Commission came up with the regulations to allow people to do this. They would have to get a business license. They would have to collect accommodations tax. They would be limited on how many people they can rent a room too is 2 people per room. They have to have 1 parking spot per room, and all parking spots have to be in the back, but it would be allowed for any residential district.
Hearing the recommendation from the planning commission, do I have a motion to adopt this as first reading?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Also, first reading on ordinance 2021-16, an ordinance to amend chapter 9 of Town Sherrall's Code of Ordinances dealing with business license.
Mayor, that's just where the state assembly the state legislature has mandated that all cities and, governments, have a standard business ordinance. And so it goes from May 1st to April 30th. We have to pass an ordinance in that regard, so acknowledge that.
Tim?
And you will also, eventually, we will have to really update our new ordinances completely for business license. But this is the actual first step to get it in line. And all of this has to be completed by January 1, 2022.
And this is a uniform statewide.
Yes, sir. That means anybody, if you have a business in Sherrall, you have a business in Columbia, you will be able to use the same business license application. You will be able to go onto a portal and pay your business license. And our numbers, the same the same NAICS code that they use in Columbia, we will use here. The same rate class that we put it in Columbia will apply to our rate codes here. So it's being universal that everybody's on the same.
Any recommendation from the administration of the ordinance? There's a further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Also, first reading of ordinance 2021-17, an ordinance to amend the Town of Sherrall official zone map to rezone certain properties from R2 multifamily residential to limited industrial. Rob?
This is a rezoning request relating to the Aramark building, Jersey Street. It's currently zoned R2 residential. It's been residential for a number of years, going all the way back to at least 1966. But of course, the character of that building is not residential in nature. This is one of the ones that should have been corrected when we did the mass rezonings a couple of years ago. However, it was just missed at the time, so we're going back and we have a few more corrections to make. This one is a little more expedited, so the Planning Commission has not had a public hearing on this yet, but they will hold a public hearing on March 29th to get input from surrounding property owners and go through that complete process. So this is simply first reading to kind of expedite that process a little bit more.
Council, you hear the recommendation from the planning commission to go ahead and approve our first reading of the ordinance. To have a motion, we accept first reading. Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Also, we have resolution 03-2021. This is a resolution authorizing and approving the acceptance of certain loan assistance monies from the South Carolina Water Quality Revolving Fund Authority, authorizing the mayor to execute certain loan assistance agreements between the Town of Sherrall and the South Carolina Water Quality Revolving Fund Authority, and other matters are related to this.
This is the $1.18 million forgivable loan. This is money to be used to make improvements at the water plant. So this is something that's required by the state revolving loan that we have to pass a resolution, and then we're given the authority to sign those documents.
Council, hear the recommendation for passage of resolution 3-2021. Do I have a motion to adopt the first reading? Adopt the resolution.
So moved.
The motion is there, second.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Also, resolution 4-2021, this is a resolution in support of the South Carolina Highway 9 widening project, northern Chesterfield County, and other matters, related to the project. This is, they just asking a letter of support
Yes.
from the council on widening the balance of number 9 from Pageland to Chesterfield.
Yes, they are warning all towns, in the county to submit a resolution. The county council's already submitted, pass their own resolution, but this is the first step in going towards four-laning that highway.
Here's the recommendation, do I have a motion to accept the resolution 4-2021? The motion, there a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Request to eliminate the Curtis Town Dixie and marketing to.
This is something before we council had decided to table it until, we had our retreat, which was in the last week, or last couple of weeks. In that discussion, council agreed that, they would eliminate the Curtis Town Dixie and, we would phase it in, with seals and use existing things, but, I wanted to officially get that taken or approved.
The recommendation, on, slogan, removal, do I have a motion to adopt this?
So moved.
There's a motion, there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Also, council, in your packet, you have reports from the, department heads. If you have any questions or comments or anything need to be addressed, please get with the administrator on that. At this time, in our agenda, we invite the visiting, our visitors. If you have any comments you would like to address the council at this time, during the public comments. Anybody would like, is there anybody that would like to address council at this time? Everybody?
Good evening, everyone. Everyone will be as Bahadu Ali Matula Bay. I live in Greater Harris. I just started 2 nonprofit organizations. One is a Hard-Run Family Service Incorporated, and it's going to be on 145 7th Street. And I'm going to be providing services to the community, transportation, healthcare, security, and others. I hope when I come to each and every one of you, the way you provide it to others, I hope you lend out to me as well. I have everything in order to do this in the midst of those times, trying to bring businesses back, trying to do a lot of more stuff here in the community center. Hotel is good, but we got to bring a lot more businesses as well. So I hope to work with y'all, and I'll keep y'all on y'all posts when y'all do come with me, all right?
Thanks, sir.
I remember how y'all treated everybody else. Have a good evening.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am, please step forward.
Good evening. My name is Lester Brown, Edwards Brown, and I'm a local pastor, and my family and I own some properties off of Front Street, 5 Ships Road, to be exact. We had demolitions done last year, and this was written correspondence received the year of 2019. Last week we received a letter of which you all are aware, maybe not fully aware of the contents from McLeod and Ruffner. And it is contrary and in my term reneging what was stated in 2019. However, since that time, I spoke with Mr. Mike Smith on yesterday morning, he informed me that he has, contacted, someone from Bud or wherever to, look into the legalities of that, et cetera. However, I just wanted to stress this part this evening. Upon receipt of a letter from 2019 that stated that my family, my siblings and I would not be charged any money for demolition of properties at 3 and 4 Shields Road off of Front Street. And then 2 years later to get a letter, a legal letter, signed by your attorneys indicating that we need to take a lien on our property for the amount of $24,600. This automatically got my blood pressure up, my diabetes up because I'm borderline, and it caused me stress and mental anguish. And I cried, and I prayed, and I cried, and I prayed, and I'm holding back tears now because it is what it is. And I know we live in a small town, and I know all of you, and you all know me. And I have great respect for Mr. Mike Smith. I have great respect for all of you. It's nothing personal, it's business. And so what I just wanted to say that in response to the letter from the attorney, I've been taught and I'm educated enough to know that I'm going to respond in writing, and I do have a few questions. My time is up, and I will ask you to respond. Thank you very much. Keep doing a good job, Mr. Mike Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, Mike, if you, our next briefing, if you will, bring council, bring us up to date on that. Anybody else? Hearing none, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Everybody will see 16 and 4 leave.